This grandmother up on Sugar Hill was 84 years old, and a woman half her age would have paid anything for the skin this Harlem grandmother had. Show that same older black woman a 10-step skincare routine today, and she would ask you just one thing. What on earth did you do to make your skin so mad at you? Because nothing on her bathroom shelf ever came from a beauty counter. 13 ordinary things, and not one of them was written down anywhere. No routine on a card, no steps torn from a magazine. It lived only in the older black woman's hands, at the sink, the way the woman before her had shown her. The young ones asked her all the time, and the older black woman always told them, but most of them had forgotten it by the time they reached home. So tonight, we write it all down, and by the end, you will know why every one of these worked, not just that it did. Number 2 crossed an ocean before it ever reached her shelf. Number 1 is not a product at all. It is the reason every other jar worked. Let us count them down. Stay with me. Number 13. Cora never owned a bottle of morning face wash. The older black woman began every morning the same way for 50 years. Cold water and a clean cloth, not cold from the tap. She kept a bowl of water in the Frigidaire overnight. Here is why the cold matters. Warm water opens the pore and loosens the skin's own oil so it washes away. Cold water does the opposite. It draws the surface tight and holds what the skin needs in place. Tap water in a Harlem summer ran warm by June. The water from the Frigidaire ran cold. So the older black woman wrung the cloth out and pressed it flat to the skin. She held it there. 30 seconds. No soap, no bottle. The face wash aisle needed a morning step to sell you. If the answer is a bowl of cold water, there is nothing to pour into a bottle, and nothing anyone ever thought to write down. Number 12. The tall bottle of Dickinson's witch hazel on Cora's shelf cost a few cents at the corner drugstore. One bottle lasted the older black woman 4 whole months. She had reached for it since before she could say why. Because the woman who raised her had. Here is the part they never told her, but she knew it in her hands. Witch hazel is what the shops call an astringent. That means it gently draws the skin tight and tells the pore to close. It does the exact job a toner does today. It just did it long before toner had a name. And it sits close enough to the skin's own balance to leave it be. It does not strip. Here is the trick. A cotton ball drinks up most of the witch hazel before it ever reaches the face. So, the African-American grandmother cut an old cotton pillowcase into small squares. She kept a folded stack right by the bottle. A flat cotton square gives nearly all of it back to the skin. The older black woman pressed it flat and held it 10 seconds to a section. Instead of dragging it across, the shops still sell the rosewater kind today for under $10. The bottle on Cora's shelf did the exact same thing for pennies. Quick pause, one breath only. Everything on this list came from our women, the black women who knew and were never thanked. Your own grandmother was probably one of them, so stay close. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And her full written guides are waiting for you at blackgrandmasvault.com. Thank you kindly. Now, back to the counting. Number 11. The blue jar of Noxzema sat on the edge of Cora's sink with its white lid. It cost very little, and it lasted. The older black woman did not use it every day. Once or twice a week only, Noxzema pulls the whole week off the skin. The oil, the city, the old cream, and the menthol in it cools while it works. Here is the part most people get backwards. The oil on your skin does not dissolve in water. It dissolves in the cream. So the trick is how she took it off. She did not rinse it straight down the drain. The African-American grandmother pressed a warm cloth over her face and lifted it away slow. That warm cloth carries the whole week off with it. Cold water only moves it around and pulls the skin tight. So the older black woman did it in the low light before the whole block woke up. The blue jar catching the little bit of window. She learned it the same way the woman before her had shown her at that sink. The jar with the white lid still sits on the shelf today. The price has barely moved. Number 10. The small bottle of castor oil in Cora's cabinet cost a few cents at the pharmacy. The older black woman used it 2 ways. Every night before bed, the older black woman ran a little along her edges, the fine hair at the hairline, a little along the brows and the lashes too. Here is why it works. Castor oil is thick enough to wrap around each single hair and hold the moisture inside it. A hair that stays soft will bend and give. A dry one snaps off. That is all breakage ever really is. The trick is the how. Dry lashes only. Castor oil slides straight off wet ones. A clean wand from root to tip along the natural curve, never dragging the skin, and never near the corner of the eye where the thin skin turns tender if the oil creeps in. The African-American grandmother penciled the date she opened each bottle inside the cabinet door. One bottle lasted her well over a year. By her 70s, the older black woman's lashes had never once thinned. The lash serum business grew to $600 million a year by the time the shops caught on. Cora's whole bottle cost less than a loaf of bread. Number 9. The yellow box of Argo cornstarch on Cora's pantry shelf cost a few cents and lasted most of the year. The older black woman used it for 2 things the beauty counter would later sell on its own. First, dry shampoo, worked into the roots the night before, never the morning of. And here is why the timing is the whole trick. Cornstarch is a powder that drinks oil. Give it all night, and it pulls the grease out of the hair while she sleeps. Rush it in the morning, and it has no time to drink anything. So it just sits on top and shows white no matter how hard you brush. Put on the night before, it brushed out clean and unseen by morning. Second, the older black woman dusted a little through a cloth to set her face powder. No third product at all. The dry shampoo aisle is worth billions now. The box of starch cost pennies. And it lived in the kitchen. Here is the line Cora never drew. The line between the bathroom shelf and the kitchen cupboard. Between what goes on the body and what goes in it. The older black woman did not think of the Noxzema as one kind of thing and the cornstarch as another. That line was drawn later by the people who needed 2 aisles and 2 budgets instead of 1 shelf. So, the next few things on this list do not live in the bathroom at all. They live in the pantry, on the shelf between the flour and the vinegar. Jet magazine open on the counter, Soul Train waiting on the set in the front room. Cora never had a word for it. She just reached for what worked. Number 8. Cora kept half a lemon in a small dish in the Frigidaire. 2 evenings a week she took it out. The older black woman rubbed the cut face of it over her elbows, over the knuckles, over any spot an old blemish had left behind. She had done this since she was a girl in that same kitchen. Here is the why, and it is worth knowing. The acid in a lemon loosens the dull, dead layer sitting on top so the fresh skin underneath can show through. That is the whole of what an exfoliant does. The shops bottle that same acid and sell it for billions a year. A lemon gave it to the African-American grandmother gently, mild enough to use again and again, but the same acid makes the skin drink up sunlight. And sunlight on that skin will burn and darken the very mark she was working to fade. So there was one rule, and the rule was the whole thing. Never before going out in the sun. Evenings only. Always rinse clean before morning. The older Black woman never once let it touch her face in daylight. Cora knew the rule long before she knew the word for what it prevented. The lemon cost a penny, and the rule that made it safe cost nothing at all. Quick word before we keep going. If you have made it this far, the best of the shelf is still ahead. Everything left is the reason a Harlem grandmother of 84 had skin a doctor could not explain. The last few things are the ones the older Black woman would not have traded for anything in that beauty counter. And number 1 is the quiet thing that made all of it work. Stay with me. Number 7. The blue bottle of Phillips milk of Magnesia cost a few cents at any drugstore in Harlem. It was sold for an upset stomach. The older Black woman used it on her face. Here is why that odd little bottle worked. It is a fine powder mixed into water. The water dries off and leaves that thin powder behind to drink the shine all day long. That is the exact same job a $20 primer sells you now. A paper-thin layer under her powder soaked up the shine. It softened the look of the pore, and it held her powder in place all day. That use was never once printed on the bottle. It moved from one Black woman to the next on their own say-so. The trick is a barely damp sponge. Never a finger. A finger lays it on too thick, and it goes chalky and flakes by noon. A barely damp sponge leaves a layer so thin you cannot see it. It dries to a soft matte in 3 full minutes. 3 minutes, not 30 seconds. So the powder sets down right on top. In a Harlem summer, the older Black woman stayed matte from church, clear through to supper. The blue bottle is still on the shelf today for pocket change. Number 6. On the nightstand next to Cora's bed sat a folded satin scarf, and under her head, a satin pillow slip. Neither one ever came from a beauty counter. The older Black woman tied that scarf every single night before she lay down. Here is why it did far more than keep the hair. Cotton grips the skin and tugs it into the same fold all night long. And a fold held long enough becomes a line you keep. Satin lets the face slip free. No grip, no fold, no line pressed into the cheek by morning. The scarf also keeps the hair oil up off the face, where it would sink into the pore overnight. That is why the African American grandmother woke without a sleep line down one side of her face, and it is why her hairline stayed clear. The salon called that protecting the hair. The older Black woman knew it protected the face just the same. The scarf cost $1 at the notions counter, the pillow slip a little more, and almost nobody alive thinks of it as skincare at all. Number 5. The blue tin of Vaseline on Cora's shelf cost almost nothing and never once seemed to empty. At night, the older Black woman smoothed the thinnest film of it over the skin, but only after she had dampened the skin first. Here is the part almost everybody gets wrong. Vaseline puts nothing at all into the skin. It only seals in the water that is already there. That is exactly why the damp skin first matters so much. Seal a dry face, and you have sealed in nothing. Dampen it first, and you trap that water against the skin all night. Not a thick coat, a trace. Too thick, and it just sits there doing nothing. You want to feel it vanish into the skin, never see it shine. A thin film over slightly damp skin leaves the face soft and full by morning. The beauty world rediscovered this only a few years ago, gave it a brand new name, built a whole glossy following around it. The African American grandmother had been doing it for 60 years before they did. The tin cost about $1 and lasted her half of one. Number 4. The brown and gold tube of Palmer's cocoa butter sat on Cora's vanity, the one nearly every black woman on Sugar Hill kept, too. The older black woman warmed a little between her palms until it melted soft. Then she pressed it into the skin while it was still damp from the basin. Here is why the warming is not a small thing. Cocoa butter is a fat that stays hard until it meets body heat. Warm it in the palm first and you melt it before it ever touches the face, so it sinks in and stays instead of sitting cold on top. It is rich in the fats that keep skin soft and springy, and they help old marks fade and even. The whole room went a little sweet with it, that warm cocoa smell every Sugar Hill kitchen carried by supper. The African-American grandmother did her elbows, her knees, her face. The shops sell that exact same cocoa butter today, and a dozen pricier jars promise what it already did. Cora paid almost nothing for it, and she carried that glow with her deep into her 80s. Number 3. For the older black woman, this one was not a jar at all. It was what happened to her soap. The bar of soap on Cora's washstand was made the old way, from fat and lye and heat, and it made two things at once: soap and glycerin. Now, glycerin is what the shops call a humectant, a fancy word for something that pulls water straight out of the air and holds it against the skin. For a long time, both stayed together right there in the bar, and that is why the old soap left the skin soft instead of tight. Then the big soap makers worked something out. The glycerin was worth more taken out and sold on its own, so they pulled it from the bar and they sold it off to the cream companies. What was left in the bar cleaned harder. It stripped the skin's own oil along with the day. That tight feeling after washing is not clean. It is skin with its barrier stripped away. And the same companies that took the glycerin out then turned around and sold it back. They sold it back to her as a moisturizer. The older black woman never once got caught in that. She kept a little bottle of glycerin and rose water on the shelf. The rose water for the scent, the glycerin for the water it held against the skin. She patted it on while the skin was still damp. It put back exactly what the new soap had taken out. Nothing was invented here. One thing was moved, and the woman who bought both paid for it twice. Cora only ever paid once. Number 2. The thick cream Cora kept in a plain jar came from a nut that grew half a world away in West Africa. Shea butter pressed from that nut, where the women of that land had worked it into their skin for longer than anyone could count. The older black woman did not need a label to tell her what her own people had carried across the water. She warmed the raw cream between her palms. She pressed it into the face and the arms. It was rich and soft, a little nutty in the air. Here is why raw was the whole point. Raw shea still holds every fat and every vitamin the nut was born with. Whip it and water it down for a pretty tub, and you strip out the very thing that worked. That is why the older black woman never touched the fancy kind, raw and unrefined, warmed in the palm. The shops sell shea now as a luxury they say they discovered. They discovered nothing. The cream had already crossed an ocean in the hands of the women who came before her. It never once stopped working. Cora's jar cost next to nothing, and it did more for her skin than any counter on Lenox Avenue ever sold. Maybe the oldest thing on the whole shelf. Number 1. Cora did not have a skincare routine. The older black woman had a shelf with 13 things on it. Every one of them bought without reading a label. Every one of them used the way the woman before her had shown her at the sink. And under all of it sat one belief. Her skin was not a problem to be fixed. It was something that already knew what to do. Her part was only to feed it, to protect it, and to stay out of its way. Every jar on that shelf either helped her skin do its work or it left the skin alone. The counter on Lenox Avenue was built on the opposite belief, that her skin was broken and that the next jar would be the one to fix it. That is the one thing the counter can never sell, because the moment you believe it, you stop buying. The older Black woman believed her skin was good as it stood. She fed it. She shaded it from the hard sun, and she let it be. At 84, her face carried barely a line the hard sun had not earned. 13 things, about $3, and a face the cosmetics counter could not explain. Cora was never poor in what she knew. She was rich in it. Cora lived to 89 in that same apartment up on Sugar Hill. The young ones who asked her never did write down what the older Black woman told them. She would have told anyone who asked, because there was nothing to guard. There was a bowl of cold water, a bottle of witch hazel, a tin of cocoa butter, a jar of shea, and the woman before her who had shown her how at the sink. Every one of these things is still sitting on a shelf somewhere today, most of them for a few dollars. The world keeps rediscovering them and giving them brand new names. The older Black woman had them all along, and she never wrote a word of it down. She got ready in the morning. That was the only name she ever gave it. It lived in her hands. Now it is written down for you. Tell me one thing before you go. What is the one thing the older Black woman in your life kept on her bathroom shelf? The one you can still picture the second you close your eyes. Put it in the comments below. I read every single one of them. If any of these were already on the shelf you grew up around, then this channel was made for you. So take a moment to like the video and subscribe. The next one is already waiting. Until then, take good care of the skin you are in. It has been doing its job all along.